and welcome to this month's Soul to Soul chat. I have the absolute honour of having a lovely chat with a drink. I don't know if you've got your cuppa, Sukhi.
I haven't actually.
That's all right, we still need one. With the lovely Sukhi Sian. I said that right.
Hi, yeah, Sukhi Sian, yeah, you said it right.
I said it wrong earlier. Sukhi is a counsellor, BACP accredited. She is a holistic practitioner and a numerologist and runs her own practice called Untitled Counselling. She's also a soul sister of mine, so I'll get onto that in a bit. But for those of you that are new to this, I'm Rachel, founder of Even Alma, and every month I just grab somebody that I'm really connected to and have a chat, soul to soul, and then share that chat with whoever wants to listen. So first of all, I'm just going to briefly explain the beauty of serendipity. Is that what we call it? Chance meetings?
Yeah, synchronicity, yeah.
How many years ago was it now? Was it like 5?
About 3 years. I think it was 2017 or 2018.
Okay.
Or even, I think it might have been before that, actually.
I think it's before that, yeah. And we went to it was like a psychic night event, didn't we? Like with this mutual, like with separate friends. And psychic nights are so much fun. I don't know if anyone's been to one, but I always have, my friend organised it. And I think there was 4 of us from my friends. And then I think were you with 3 or 4 of your friends?
It was 2 of us, yeah, me and my friend. One was meant to come, another one, but he couldn't make it. So it was me and Kelly and my friend in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all sat on the same table, weren't we? And you were next to my friend Becky, and we all started getting chatting, and you had this random spare ticket to a silent retreat, which I absolutely wanted to go on, and we just kept in touch, didn't we? And it turned out we are really, we're soul sisters, aren't we? We have a really deep spiritual connection, and we're both on soul paths, soul missions that complement each other, and Sukhi's doing amazing things. So the reason why I've brought Sukhi on to chat today is because both of us are very passionate about spirituality, spiritual equality at all walks of life, and particularly in health and well-being. And as a counsellor, Sukhi is like registered with the BACP, which is it the UK's most recognised accreditation, would you say?
It is. So it's the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy. There are other professional bodies now as well, but is the main one alongside UKCP.
Yeah, it is one of the biggest ones, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And you are a massive part of trying to integrate the importance of spiritual beliefs and spirituality into a counselling setting. So it's something that we're both really passionate about. I work more with this in end-of-life work than in life, but it is important in her health and wellbeing journey. And I know Sukhi is like a forefront runner of this within the clinical counselling practice. So over to you, Sukhi. Like, you're going to share with us some of your experience and knowledge and wisdom.
Wow. Okay, where do I start? First of all, it's so interesting how we met at that psychic event, and you saying about, because we were there connecting, obviously having messages come through spirit, and that's always been something that I've been interested in, is the afterlife, is, you know, loved ones passing over. So like you're doing that end of life work, so I really resonate with that as well. So since I was really young, I was always curious about life after death, and you know what happens when we pass away, and always believed that there's something out there, you know, that our soul continues. I always had that sense as a young child. So I trained as a counsellor. 21 I was when I started my counselling training, so a very long time ago. And so I went into psychodynamic counselling, which is very much about looking at how our early childhood, our attachment styles, and our earlier experiences, how that informs who we are, our personality, how we relate to others, how we relate to ourselves. And as we go along in life, sometimes we might face challenges in the here and now, but actually they're to do with the unresolved stuff from the past. There might be some blockages in relation to the past. So a lot of my work has been around kind of like exploring the unconscious, subconscious mind with clients over time. But alongside that, I've always believed in spirituality. I've always been quite spiritual, but I've not really been open about those views in the counselling field. And I think that really is down to there was not really a space for it, you know, like in my counselling training, and actually even in counselling training now for students, there really isn't that much space for counselling and spirituality, or spirituality or that kind of thing. So so I found myself actually being quite in the closet about spirituality up until recently.
That's not how, like, staying in the closet and not being true to yourself is the opposite of what we try and do and support people with therapies and counselling. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that was part of my journey, was when I started to be more myself in the last 3-4 years, and I went down the road of Reiki healing. So I went for a Reiki session, and then after that, because I was so amazed by how I felt with the Reiki session, because before that I would have been a bit, not necessarily skeptical, but I wasn't really sure about energy and, you know, all of that. But when I had the Reiki session, I was really amazed at how quickly the practitioner picked up on so much that was going on somatically in my body, but that was a result of manifestation of emotional and psychological stuff. And to me, I thought, in a counselling session, this could have took, like, you know, 10 sessions to get to this part, whereas with the Reiki session, it was all there. So I was really drawn to the chakras and working with energy from that point. And that's when I began to be more open about spirituality, because I found myself around other people who were also, you know, like-minded people. So those conversations got more comfortable and more normalized. I went on to do like crystal healing, and also then psychic development as well, and as you mentioned, numerology. So alongside that, I was still working in my counselling profession, more so in supervision and management roles at that point. So I found myself in this position where actually really looking at the bigger picture of like currently in my other job, we work with trauma. So I'm really drawn to like trauma isn't just in the mind, is it? It's the body, and it's also trauma in the soul. So a couple of years ago, I went to the BACP conference, you know, that conference on spirituality. So I went there, and I had already started to go to some of the BACP networking meetings around 2015, where counsellors were getting together to explore spirituality. I did kind of find, though, that a lot of people were coming from a religious perspective, a faith perspective, and I still find myself in the closet, because mine was coming more from, my experience was more from going through a spiritual awakening, going through, you know, the connection with life after death, being really interested in near-death experiences, and reading people's stories about what they experienced if they were in a coma and they went to the other side, and what you know, the angelic realms, that kind of thing. So anyway, when I was at this conference, it was just amazing being around about 100 other therapists who just also wanted to talk about spirituality, and it was just so kind of like, you know, refreshing and encouraging. So I spoke at the conference about that it's just so great to be around these people, and that spirituality is finally coming out of the closet. And that term I got from also, you know, Rebecca Campbell, because she talks about spirituality coming out of the closet. So that was captured in one of the next journals, the counselling journal, where it said one of the delegates spoke about coming out of the spiritual closet. And then it just felt right then to write an article in that journal about my experience of coming out of the spiritual closet. And that's where it all just began. So that article actually only really came out last April in lockdown, so it's not that long ago. So I wrote about how, you know, counselling and spirituality, they, you know, I believe they go hand in hand, but actually they're very separate, and that's what my experience was, that you keep it separate. So I spoke about in there about, like you said earlier, it can be quite damaging, anyone being in the closet for any, you know, whatever you're hiding, because you're not being true to yourself. And what I found was the more open I began to be, actually it encouraged other people around me to be open, and it just, the ripple effect of these conversations started, where people are like, oh, I also believe that, oh, I'm also Reiki trained, oh, I also, you know, synchronicity, oh, I see numbers. And it was just like, whoa. So all of a sudden this like gateway just opened, and it's just been flowing since then, effortlessly, I find.
Well, spiritual pain is real. Spiritual pain is really real.
Yeah.
experience it as a soul midwife and a life practitioner. Spiritual pain is a big part for a lot of the journey for a lot of people, and actually working through spiritual pain in life before we reach the end of our life is really important, and it's a really important path of healing, of inner peace. So when you're falling into a closet because you don't fit a certain box, or because somebody else isn't spiritual or religious or whatever it is, their belief system might not look the same as yours, you're not being true to yourself. And I think there's a misconception that allowing people to speak about their truth isn't converting you to their truth. It's just allowing people to express themselves and their belief systems, and that it's okay to have different belief systems. And I'm finding that things are slowly moving forward with this. Spiritual equality is really important, and allowing other people to have their own belief systems without forcing them upon others is really important. So I think it's such an important part of counselling, because the mind, the body and the soul are very interlinked. They're not separate, they're very interlinked. And if you are going through something, it's highly likely you're going to feel it in your body, you're going to feel it in your heart, your thoughts are going to go that way, and also your spiritual energy around you will also pick up on that and work with that as well. So it's hard, isn't it? It's so hard to explain, but it is so important.
It's hard to explain, but I think what you said there about spiritual pain, it's so, you know, those words are so like significant, because it's like kind of like that feeling that you can't shift, that you just have this inner sense or that inner knowing, or doesn't matter how much counselling or mind work that you've done, or even like the work through your body, the trauma work through your body, if that feeling keeps reoccurring and coming back, or then there's some deep soul healing that needs to happen. And talking about from my own experience of I guess what led me down into past life healing, and I know we've had these conversations before, haven't we, where we've had lots, where I really couldn't shift this connection that I had with somebody in this life, and then we ended up going, you know, and he also had the similar experience with me. We've known each other for about 20 odd years, and we then actually after a lot of like, you know, ups and downs together, we actually went for past life healing together over a period of 3 years, you know, like 1 year do a bit of healing, then go back. And actually what came out of that for us was absolutely mind-blowing, but it shifted so much for me and so much for him, where we were able to, I suppose, like heal those soul, the kind of like deeper wounds in the soul. But it took that kind of, you know, that process to go that far, and I suppose to be open and willing to try something different as well.
Definitely. I don't know about you, I see healing as like layers. So we talk about mind, body, soul, don't we? And of course it can come in different ways, but from my own personal experience, my own healing journey started with the physical, because that was what I knew, how I was conditioned, that the physical was, you know, the place to heal, where all the healing happened. Then I focused on my mind, noticed the mind body connection, started researching, started training. And then I know they don't go like 1, 2, 3, you go back and forth, okay? But actually mine was body, mind, then soul. Because then once I'd healed those layers and was really working really hard on my mind and body connection, the soul stuff really started to come up. The really deep stuff that I was holding deep within was really starting to come up, and the spiritual pain was starting to come to the surface. That is really deep healing. That is when you make life-changing transformation.
Yeah, absolutely.
What the counsellor wants to happen.
Yeah, and you're right, because things happen in layers, don't they? And we have to be ready for, we have to, it's almost like an organic natural process.
You can't force it. You can't. It doesn't work that way.
Exactly. And things pop out the blue unexpectedly. So there's that aspect as well, isn't it? Where things might pop up and you're like, oh God, what's this about now? I've got to look at this. And it keeps like you revisiting, aren't you? So I guess it's like really that journey of, like, I suppose I describe it as you're connecting back to yourself, your journey back home to your soul, and your true self. And what that involves is really letting go of all that social conditioning, cultural conditioning, and whatever other conditioning, and really let go of who you thought you were. And that in itself is a massive process, isn't it? And but like you say, it's transformative, absolutely transformative.
Yeah, that's where the long-term changes and transformation happens, isn't there? So, I mean, I know, like I said, there's different layers, but I know some people that are very, very, very spiritual, but wouldn't ever think of looking at the emotional and psychological layer of themselves. It's like they focus on feeling, maybe look after their body a little bit, but then don't even touch the psychological side of it. And that's a layer that's really important. Some people start with the psychological layer, then might go into spirituality, and then the physical changes, or the physical sort of health starts being looked at. There isn't a particular path. This is really about where you are as an individual and how you're meant to go on this path. Some of us, I have learned, are never meant to get to that deep soul place, that deep, well, that's enlightenment, isn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, I feel like, is it probably like 2 people in a lifetime that might actually become enlightened properly? Like, they're ascended masters, let's be honest. Exactly. Going into this like enlightenment journey, going, I am actually going to be Buddha. You've put a goal on it and you're already in your ego.
Exactly. That's spiritual ego, isn't it? Yeah. So you have to long ongoing. It's and I think it's accepting. It's like shifting your attitude and viewpoint of life, that actually everything you go through is whatever is unraveling, whatever you're going through is teaching you something, which is making you, you know, who you are, and how you apply those lessons to your life. I guess it's having that self-awareness about, I suppose, being awake and living your life in that kind of mode. And and I find that actually now that I've become more open about spirituality within counselling, like even my website, I've put in there about working spiritually. So it's really to give clients that permission, because if you're a client and you want to find a counsellor who is open to spirituality, if they've not advertised themselves in that way, then how would you know? So now often I get clients contacting me and saying, the reason I chose you is because I'm also spiritual. I work with crystals, or I meditate, or whatever. So even if they may never bring their spirituality, let's say if somebody comes to me because they're going through a divorce, whatever, but the fact that the permission to explore spirituality is there, it's an invitation for them to bring that into that safe space if they want to or need to.
And that's the important part. That is the important part. And, for anybody that's never had counselling or doesn't understand the therapeutic practice, what doesn't happen and what should never happen from a legal, moral perspective is the practitioner should never force their belief system onto the person who's actually in counselling, the student or the client, whatever we're called. It's a very misconception to think that if someone opens up spiritually because they're vulnerable, that the practitioner's job will then, when they're vulnerable, convert them to their way of thinking and belief system. That is not how the therapist client works. It's not legal, it's not morally ethical to do that way. It's all about opening up a safe space for you as an individual to share your inner belief system and heal. That is not what a counsellor and a therapist's job is. And that is important because those are the rules that the BACP stand for as well. It's very much, it's not about the counsellor telling somebody how to live and to follow a set of rules.
Yeah, so anyone who's listening to this, like you say, there's the BACP ethical framework, for counselling professions, and it's about ethical professional work, and no matter what your client brings to you, it's about working therapeutically with them, for their best interest, and also accepting your own limitations as well, what we feel we can and cannot work with, and if we can't, it's about signposting clients elsewhere, it's about the client's experience. We're facilitating alongside the client for them to, I guess, make sense of their experience in a non-judgmental space, whatever they bring. It's not about, like you say, about converting, but I guess people might really have that fear around around spirituality.
I understand that fear. I am very, very sacred and very confident in my belief system, and I still have people try and tell me that that's not the way. So there will always be people like that, but they are on their own path and they don't understand what love is, and unconditional love, which is what we're all aiming to achieve. So I just leave them to it. But it does. Like, I'm confident in that, but if you're not confident in that, it can really derail you, and that can create spiritual pain. It's not for somebody else to tell you how to be spiritual and what path to follow. It really isn't. It's really important, really important.
Yeah, definitely.
We're going to finish up in a bit because we promised to chat for ages, would we? But
we would.
We've actually spoken about this, like, on the recording, because we were too busy celebrating it before press record. But this week you have been accepted as a non-exec board on the non-exec board of directors for the BACP Spirituality Committee, which is massive, and it's so well deserved, and it's so important, and I'm thrilled to bits. And it'd be, oh, you're so welcome. Just like, what does that mean? So to finish up, what does that mean for the way counselling is going to go?
Yeah, so BACP, for those, I mean, because you didn't know that BACP had a spirituality division. A lot of people didn't know that BACP had a spirituality division. So, you know, the core of BACP, there is, I mean, the spirituality division's been there for 30 years, but I guess it's been quite on the side. Like, you know, it's been, so you've had this group of people who've been pushing spirituality for 30 years, and over time the recognition and the work's been done, you know, to really, I guess, part of BACP spirituality is, I mean, BACP is to recognize that spirituality and how important that is. So the role that I've gone for is, so an exec member for the BACP Spirituality Division. There's about 5 of us new exec members, and the purpose of that is to drive forward spirituality within the BACP Spirituality Division, in the sense of raising awareness, in the respect of equality, diversity, and also student focus, thinking about the students in the future, about I mean, you came to the first student meeting the other week, didn't you? So it's really about promoting, doing research around spirituality counselling and normalising it. And I guess kind of like with the hope to kind of mainstream it, so it is recognised as part of BACP, not just like this little thing on the side. So at the moment, because I've literally it's just been, you know, I've only just got the role and I haven't started, so I don't know the ins and outs of it. So that's in a nutshell what I envision.
It's really exciting. So as a holistic practitioner and a therapist myself, it's amazing. But going back to when I needed counselling and therapy after, I mean, for those that follow this page a lot, I had major spinal trauma, major surgery, massive life-changing neurological conditions. I went from a belief system I could do anything, I was an ex-athlete in training, super fit, to all of a sudden having an invisible disability, loss of career, loss of income, like a massive life change. I'm not going to go into it. So I went into counselling, understandably, because I knew I needed somewhere to release emotions that was part of my healing. And that's where my deep psychological support happened. But what was really interesting, I started off with a clinical psychotherapist who was incredible, and we were matched because she actually works specifically with ex-athletes that have had physical life-changing conditions and helps them work on their mindset, because their mindset is conditioned to push. And when you have that life change, it doesn't work. It's really hard to let go because you become angry with yourself. Why am I weak? All those negative self that doesn't help healing. And she was incredible. But it got to a point where that psychological change had happened, but there was still stuff there. And it was only when I carried on and found a new therapist who was psychodynamic, and she was person-centric. And she brought in spiritual tools because she recognised that I was a spiritual person and that no one had acknowledged that part of my healing journey. And that I had those tools to tap into, even in health, because we separate it, don't we? And actually, it was her, through her, like I just had like weekly counselling with her for about 18 months. And it was just a space for me to go and work through the spiritual pain that had, an emotional pain, obviously, but more the spiritual pain that had created from the trauma, what had happened. And obviously how that was brought in through the past. And it was incredible. I had so much healing from that. I would say even more so, like leaps and bounds, from the more clinical side. But that really wasn't valid. It's just for me personally, the spiritual, the person-centered spiritual form of therapy was what supercharged my healing, which is why I'm so glad it's been recognised in the BACP, because it's a really valid part of therapy. So thank you for all that you do. You're doing great work. I love you.
Rachel. It's great, isn't it? I think just like how we connected about however many years ago it would have been, and how we've both connected on there's so many similarities on our own journey, our own ascension path, and we've both really supported each other in that journey. And I think when you do become more open and you are more yourself, you draw in people who are like you, and I think if whoever's watching this, you know, that courage to be yourself really does open up new doors, and you do draw in like-minded people, the right situations, that kind of thing. It takes you know, courage. But it's just putting that one foot in front of the other and just having that faith, really, and things sometimes just effortlessly evolve then. So yeah, it's been great to share my journey with you, Rachel. It's been my fellow soul sister.
I think, you know, to finish, it's very evident to go on this ascension journey, to go on this healing journey, you need to have a level of self-love. So if the self-love and the self-compassion isn't there, that's where you start. Because I know I get a lot of questions around, well, how do we go on the journey? Self-love is where you start, and to the point where you're confident enough to go deep into your shadow and start healing yourself. And I know you're very on the same path with that. So self-love is where we start, and I can't wait to see what happens. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Rachel. Take care. Bye. Bye.